Thank you. Welcome to the Barnstable Conservation Commission hearing on August the 2nd. Tonight, and this is the first time that Commissioner Bill joined us, so we have a full commission. Commissioner John just stepped out for a minute, so before I open the hearings, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Sampu.
Aye.
Excuse me, let me turn my mic on. Sampu.
Aye.
Moran.
Aye.
Abadili will be back. Hearn.
Present.
Gilmore present. Foster. And Lee.
Present.
And tonight we have Administrator Darcy Carley.
Present.
And we also have our Administrative Assistant, Kim Kavanaugh. You usually have everything written down, but tonight I don't. We're all present and accounted for, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of the Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August the 2nd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of Julia B. Givens, trustee, Robert Gonzalez, Brendan J. Brenzel, Corey A. Griffin, trustee, Glen Lane Nominal Trust, Lynn Osborne. The hearing will be held remotely. The hearing will be held on televised on Channel 18. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 376 Main Street, Hyannis. This hearing of the Barnstable Conservation Commission is being recorded and transmitted by the Information Technology Department of the Town of Barnstable on Channel 18. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmissions, please let me know. Anyone? None. Tonight's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to Conservation Division at 200 Main Street, Hyannis, before the hearing. For all the applications, please make sure that you stake out the projects at least 7 days prior to the hearing. This is critical for the commissioner to do the site visit, and it will enhance their understanding of the projects. If the project site is not staked and during any site visit, it will be ground for a lack of information and will be continuing under the NOI and the positive determination for the RDA, and this is just for your information. I just want to emphasize this. Sometime for the last few hearings, we have some situation that the site is not staked out at time. For your information, this hearing will be the last in-person hearing. Starting from the next hearing, August the 9th, this will be a remote Zoom meeting until March 31st, 2023. Tonight we have two RDA. The first one is Julia B. Givens, trustee, remove and relocate one existing licensed float piles. Remove existing licensed float and replace with new 8x10 and 6x20 floats at 707 South Main Street, Centerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 186, Parcel 066. Raul.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant and property owners of this parcel. With us tonight is also the applicant himself. Dennis is in the public sitting back there. Just a clarification, Mr. Chairman. The checks for the ads, is it mailed to 200 Main Street or 367 Main Street? 367. 367.
You changed
Okay,
now.
thank you. Yes, this application is a request for determination of applicability. What the project consists of is removing the existing 208 square feet float and replacing it with a 200 square foot float in a different configuration. The resources on or around 100 feet of this proposed float relocation are Land Under the Ocean, which is also Centerville River. There's a salt marsh, there's tidal waters, there's a wetland further upland. The location of where the work is happening is actually on the waters of Centerville River. The project was presented last week before the Waterways Committee, where there were no comments in opposition of the project, and in fact, they unanimously voted to recommend approval of this project to this board. I have not seen the official statement from them, but there was an email sent from the Waterways Committee saying that they did vote it and they did recommend approval of the project. The proposed float does not extend any further seaward or into the center of Centerville River. We're holding the face of the existing float. This float and pier has been permitted in the past. The history of the property dates back to the 1930s or even before then, where there was a boathouse with piers, and then in 1991, the existing fixed pier with the ramp and float was licensed. And then again in 2004, there was another modifications to the float, which added the two little wings, both of which are 4 foot by 8 feet, 4 foot by 6 feet. In total, the existing float adds up to 208 square feet. What we're proposing to do is change the configuration to make better use of the docking side on the water side of this float. What we're proposing to do is install an 8 by 10 main float, and off of it, what we called a finger, which is gonna be 6 by 20 feet to the southwest of the main float. To do this, there is one of the existing piles that has to be removed and reset. So the pile further to the northeast is gonna be removed and reset to the further southwest, center with the proposed finger pier. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
For the record, we did receive the email from Harbor Master and the Waterway. They approved the projects as proposed. We also received a DMF letter for comments, and this is dated August the 1st. DMF has 3 comments. The proposed flow would be installed over an intertidal flat and includes skids. While skids would reduce the overall area of direct impact, these structures would repeatedly grounded in each tidal cycle, causing turbidity and potential scarring effects. DMF recommending instead the piles with float stops be installed to ensure the float remains above the sediment surface at low tide. Second, the fuel spills from the refilling of construction equipment would adversely impact sensitive resource area. Impact to the resource area can be avoided by prohibiting all land-based equipment from being refilled on site. If equipment is refilled on site, adequate containment and cleaned up material should be provided to minimize impacts. The third, any activity requiring a barge should be coordinated to avoid barge grounding or operations in shallow water, less than 2 feet between motor skid and substrate. Overmapped shellfish habitat. Question from the commissioner? John?
Raul, a few questions, please. Why are they making the change was one. More importantly, what is the square footage now of the permitted floats versus what it would be, the square footage of the total floats if this is approved? And a question I think we as a commission have to make sure we address is, if this is approved, does it constitute a substantial change or not under our regulations? I just think we need to address that for the record. So those two questions.
So the square foot of the approved existing flow licensed is 208 square feet. That was the license from 2004.
Is that what's there now, what I saw today?
So no, the wings have not always been put. So the original license from 91 was the main 8 by 16, 8 by 20 is the main one that was there in 1991. In 2004, there was a license and permission through this board and through the state licensing process for 2 wings. So with the two wings, it adds up to 208. What is being proposed, combining the two proposed floats, is 200 square feet.
100 square feet, exactly. And
Right.
why are they doing it? I saw that there were 3 boats tied up there today. One inside, the large boat, the New Pursuit outside, and then a rib on, just resting on one of the floats. Why are they doing this? Is it a navigation issue? I don't understand.
So the proposed configuration is better for docking a boat and also providing a greater separation to the dock that's to the northeast for better access and leaving the existing or the docking area. There is no concerns with the dock that's to the southwest because that existing float is some 200 plus feet away from this one. So it's just better docking placement on this property. I do want to also clarify something on that letter from DMF stating that this is in the tidal flats. That actually may be a misinterpretation. This float is actually located 91 feet seaward of mean low water. The tidal flats are in the range of the tide range. This is a depth of more than 1.5 feet at low tide. So I think there was probably some misunderstanding from DMF on this plan.
And one final question, Raul. Is there an intent to change the use of the pier and floats by changing boats?
No, there's the two boats that I know of, and those will continue to be docked there. No changes. It will still continue to be a residential float.
So the largest boat was the Pursuit with the twins on it. Is that right, sir?
Do you want to come up and identify yourself on the table and speak to the mic?
I'm not a boater, so I don't know how to read what's on the site.
The question, one more time?
Was there, do you intend to change the boats that are there now, increase the size or change them? I saw that looked like a relatively new Pursuit with the twins on it.
No, those will remain the same. There is currently right now, there's a Zodiac pulled up on
Yeah.
the float. That's normally not there. That's under my porch, but it's, sometimes it's there.
The
When
largest
all
of the
my
boat was
grandchildren
the-
are there.
The largest of the boats was the Pursuit. It looks like probably 28 or 30 with twins on it, yeah. And that you
That-
intend to keep that boat?
That's correct.
Okay, and Tom, it's my opinion, this is,
I'm sorry to
if-
interrupt. Can John get a little closer to the microphone, please?
if this is approved, it does not constitute a substantial change at all, just my recommendation.
Do you mind to identify yourself on the mic?
Oh, I'm Dennis Gavin.
Thank you. George?
Yeah, Raul, I think the confusion came, normally when we see a hydrographic survey, the depths are indicated in minus figures,
Yeah.
so that might have been the confusion with the state.
I can probably see that.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, I don't see any problem at all.
Any other question from the commissioner?
I don't have any questions. I went out there, looked at it, and I talked with Mr. Gavin at the same time and got the same reading as to what he wanted, which has been articulated well today. Pardon my voice. So I think that there's no change in where the boats were going to be positioned in terms of the center to the river or anything like that. It's the same place it's always been. It's just widening and narrowing. It's what it's done. So it should be pretty easy.
Thank you. Pete?
Yeah, I think the DMF suggestion of stops is a minimal imposition on the applicant. And if it is in fact getting close to the sediments, that would cause a deleterious effect. I myself am not necessarily in agreement with Commissioner Abadili as to the whether or not this is a significant change. I'm fairly certain that a 28 to 30-foot Pursuit doesn't have much depth difference between its engines down and the bottom. So I myself, from a scientific standpoint, and the effects on our benthos, am not so pleased with such a large boat with big twins in such shallow water. But I probably will be voted in the minority.
Thank you, Pete.
I think the question on impact traditionally is focused on the dimensions of the dock and pier, not the pier so much, but the floats. And I think Raul has articulated that pretty well, and John, I think, has confirmed it. Pete, I think that it's wise to consider the impact of the boat, but the boat was previously approved. So we're not, and there's no change to that. So I think that the lack of an impact question is, maybe that's not the right way of wording it. I think there is no impact for us to be concerned about.
Actually, I rather expect that the pursuit never came in front of us. It's a historic pier, and it has a boat on it. So we never did, I'm almost certain, agree as a commission that this boat was suitable for the dock. I want to make the record clear.
But if I can add something to that, so the permits on the structures on the site predates what currently we are reviewing under new or major modifications to docks. So yeah, those requirements that we go through today for new piers, these existing licenses and permits did not go through that.
Right, so if Commissioner Abadili's observation that this, in his opinion, was not a significant change from the dock, then you still fall under that grandfather. I just happen to disagree.
The question is, it's not its use, though, but under
John,
the
do you
reg-
want to speak to the mic?
I'm sorry, Tom. Under the regulations, as we wrote them, if it's a substantial change from an existing dock,
Right.
going from 208 square foot float to a 200 square foot can hardly be, in my
It's not
opinion,
a
justified as a substantial change. So that's more
Okay.
of my legal interpretation than
Yep.
where you're coming from, Pete.
Thank you, John. George?
Yeah, one last comment. If indeed you're going to have to put float stops here, Raul, it's going to be a challenge with just those two piles. So I would suggest moving that existing pile on the 10-foot float maybe to the middle of it on the northeast side. And that way you could run chains to both corners and support the floats that way. But
If I can also add this, the license here and the approvals in the past through this commission for this, float, this is a seasonal float.
no.
So every
right.
off-season, the ramp and the float are not in place.
Yep.
There is more than 1.5 feet of water. This typical residential float, the top only sinks into the water about 4 or 5 inches for those who are familiar with them. So there's always going to be, at low tide, more than 1 foot of water underneath this float. I don't think that the float stops are really warranted in this condition. But yeah, like George said, a float with a finger, a two-pile positioning system will not be enough for float stops. You're looking at more piles.
Challenge. It could be done. You could, the 6-foot wide float with the right brackets could be attached to the other one, so they could be supported end-to-end with two flow piles. But I agree, Raul. I think I don't know what other commissioners feel about float stops in here, but
Any other comments from the commissioner? Any public comment on this? None? Could I have a
Move for a
motion to,
negative determination?
what?
Move for a negative determination.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
It's okay.
Okay.
I don't think, any of us can move it. so.
Second.
Second, okay.
No, let me read through that stuff. Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination without the full stop?
Second,
All in favor?
I-
Oppose?
it's unanimous.
No, it's not.
Oh, I'm
6
sorry.
to 1.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it, Peter. 6-1.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
The second RDA of the evening is Robert Gonzalez. Removes trees and understory and replace with gravel to create a parking area at 17 Pond Meadow Drive, Marston's Mill, as shown on the assessors maps 045, parcel 035. Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you identify yourself on the mic? Make sure the mic is on.
Yes, Robert Gonzalez.
Welcome. Do you want to take questions, or do you want to talk about your projects?
Yeah, I apologize. I've never been through this process before, so.
That's okay.
So basically, I have a camper that is parked in front of my house on the road right now, which is a hazard for, anybody with emergency services coming down our street. So on my property, I hired a surveyor to come out and actually stake out the ground so that I can actually see what I have for land. And in the green, what you have on your screen there, I was hoping that I can be able to put on my property 1,200 square feet of a parking area just to park the camper. Nobody's going to be living in it. It's literally just so that we have a place to put the camper when we're not using it. Out of the 1,200 square feet, I was hoping to put some crushed stone, about 600 square feet. 600 square feet of either wood chips or mulch, whatever would be acceptable. And then 200 square feet of plantings, which I was hoping to put arborvitaes and clethras, if I'm pronouncing that properly, once it's done, just to kind of give it a nice curb appeal to the house that we have. I hope that explains it, right?
Any question from the commissioner? Larry?
Mr. Gonzalez, I did go out there, and it appeared to me that the green area that you've depicted, while not staked, I could visualize the depth of it, and it appears, I presume the length of the camper is not more than this green area. I presume that. That being said, in your plan, which, by the way, for an RDA is a very good plan, it shows that the back line is 65 feet from the wetlands. That's what it shows by an arrow. And in that regard, what exactly is the nature of the wetlands back at the back of your house? And by that I mean, is it a marsh? Is it a pond? Is it a stream? How would you describe it? I went back and looked, and it was heavily vegetated, so I couldn't detect anything specific.
So we live in the back of the bogs, so I've honestly don't really know what's back there because I've never been back there. But
All right. But it's a bog, it's vegetated. Any water flow from there at all? If it rains a lot, or does it come into your backyard? Does it approach the house more closely than it would be otherwise?
no, the way that our house is set up is that our house is slightly elevated than what the bogs are, so it goes downhill, and then there's this kind of a ditch that separates our house that, if it rains enough, it does fill up and it will start to come back our way, but we haven't seen that.
Okay. The only other question I have, maybe more of a comment, is what you put underneath the trailer or the camper. You're not advocating for a hard top or a concrete, but have you thought about crushed stone or something that think that may become more acceptable?
Correct.
Sometimes we get into mulch and chips and that sort of stuff, and it may be fine for a garden, but not putting a heavy vehicle there, so something to consider.
So the crushed stone, just to clarify, was just basically somewhere so the camper can actually sit on. The mulch is just basically so when you're driving down the road, aesthetically, it looks
Okay.
like the rest of the house.
Other commissioners may have other comments. I just wanted to get that issue on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
John?
Just a quick question. By the way, it's a gorgeous camper.
Oh, thank you.
Using good help. The plan on this keeps saying a proposed new garage. I assume that is inaccurate.
That might be,
That's what the plan says.
yeah, that might be something from the previous owner or something like that, but
Okay.
that's not me.
Just for the record, then, we're going to delete that and make sure we're not voting on that. Thank you.
Bill?
I didn't see any, I can't, your design doesn't really show where the 0 to 50 is, how far you are from the wetland. And Larry just suggested that it says 65 feet from the wetlands. Is this entire area where you're putting the camper more than 50 feet from the wetland?
Yes, it's more closer to that 100-foot wetland, and actually, I didn't have this, but when I first acquired the property, I actually got something from Fred Stepanis, which is no longer here, that he actually helped me to figure out where I actually sit. So, because when I bought the house, I didn't know any of this conservation stuff, so it was quite an education.
Thank you.
Louise?
I don't know how relevant this is to where you're going to park your camper, but it looked to me as if your lawn and the activity that was going on in the back of your house was very, very close, if not just right up against the edge of the wetland. And in fact, your drawings show that. So what is the history of that area?
So the history as far as distance-wise from Fred's markup, where that ditch sits to the corner of my house, and that does not include the sunroom that was added on by the previous owner, whenever that was, but this is stamped June 4th, 2014. From that ditch to the closest corner, the right-hand corner of my house, it's 50 feet to there. And then that's, you still got the rest of the house and then the road, which is.
Yeah, I'm talking about the lawn and all
And-
the stuff. It looks like you've got a huge tree that you're chopping up, and, where did that come from? And
So that
how did the
fell,
lawn get to the edge of the wetland?
How did the lawn get to the edge?
Yeah,
It was, it's how we brought the house. That was already there.
I see.
I put irrigation in the front of the house and was told I couldn't even touch my backyard. So when we purchased the house, we were envisioning, putting it to the way that we wanted it with our kids, and it was quite a discovery when I found out I couldn't use the back of my yard.
Yeah, I have concern about the location of your lawn relative to the wetland, but maybe that's a subject for something else, not necessarily parking the camper.
Any other comment from the commissioner?
Is Darcy going to speak to him?
If not, I just want to mention a couple of things here. Like John said, we need you to cross out the proposed new garage on your plan. The other thing is that we need the dimensions that you can add to the plan. That, that you can get a copy to Darcy with the actual dimensions, like how many feet wide, how many feet long in both.
I will email that
for the
over.
driveway.
I actually have that, so I'll email it over. I can hand it to you now, however you like.
So Darcy, do you have any question or comment?
I'm going to be the bad person here. No,
Okay.
no. I wanted to make sure the commission is comfortable, I didn't have the square foot area. That's not on the plan. So just remember, when you look at our guidelines on what type of filing that you would expect for somebody to do this much hardscape, we talk about patios and decks and even things, even if it's not in the 50, but it's something large, just outside of the 50, the commission sometimes feels that needs to be a notice of intent, and you're getting the mitigation for it. But I just want to bring that up, because this was on a fine line. I'm kind of surprised that everybody seems comfortable with it, but if you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. I just want to just keep this in mind when you do approve this.
So add the square footage of the proposed driveway, the parking area onto the plan.
Okay.
Any public comment on this? None? John, you raise your hand?
Yeah, something else I forgot. I'm sorry, Tom, but you've got a list of proposed native and non-native plants, trees, shrubs, removal in the resource area. What is that?
I'm not sure what you're looking at. I think that might be something different, because again, you had mentioned about the proposed garage. I don't have anything
Okay,
about a
so-
garage.
All right. That was on one of the plans in the package. It was not on the other one, so that's not relevant.
I don't know what that
Good.
is.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
if that's the case, you should cross that out.
Can
when
I
you
see
scan
what
your
what
plan.
that is, so that I can know?
Did you see this?
There's a legend table with the planting.
Okay. Oh, so that was probably
Yeah, I
with
have it up on
Fred.
the screen. It's written right underneath the.
Right underneath the legends, it mentioned the different types of plant size, quantity. So if that is not applied to these applications, cross that out, please.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Any public comment on this? Go ahead. Oh. Come on up and identify yourself. Need a markup sheet.
There's a sheet there for you to sign. Your name.
Please sign up on the sign-up sheets.
My name's Rosemary Martin, and I'm a property abutter. I live next door, and I just had a couple of questions and comments. So I've lived there for 24 years, and so the proposed site is really right on the property line, very close to, if I'm looking out my bank of windows in the front of my house, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be seeing the camper, which I'm going to guess would be permanently parked there. And I had a couple other concerns, too, about the number of trees that are going to come down. I think there's about 35 trees there, and I don't know. It's a nice little wooded area that is there now that will forever be gone. And my other question actually was, what are the regulations as far as how close you can do that to the wetlands? Because the wetlands does extend over my property, too. And I just wondered, as a reference point.
Just for your information, normally if they are removing the tree outside of the 50, we have less stringent requirements per se. If it is within the 50s, then we are looking at it very specifically where you are removing the trees, and we may have to require you to replace the trees one by one, but not outside of the 50s.
Oh, well, how could you replace the trees if there's a parking area there?
Within
You
the
mean
50,
somewhere else?
Within
Okay.
the 0 to 50, between 0
Yeah.
to 50, if you're removing a tree, a proposal to remove a tree, we would ask you to replace to planting another tree at some other location within
Oh,
the
I see.
50s.
At some
but
other
not
location?
outside.
Right, okay. Well, I guess, so the other, when you're looking at the plan that's up there, on the other side of the property, there's a really big, wide-open space with no trees. That's because this area actually is not level, not completely level, it would have to be leveled. But the other area on the other side, no trees would have to be removed. And I just was curious about, why cut down all these trees to put in a parking area when there's, on the other side of the property, there's no trees and it's perfectly level? I mean, I don't know. It just seems kind of like a shame to cut all those trees down, and that's my concern.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Pete?
Yeah, so we have a 0 to 50 that is not undisturbed, it's disturbed. We have a large amount of clearing in the 50 to 100. We can't be asked, I'm sort of surprised at how did this come to us as an RDA? I mean, you come, again, you seek guidance from our office as to, your submission of plans for us to assess. And yeah, Darcy, I sort of agree with you. I mean, yeah, this is stretching it.
Yeah, I just want to make, it's not staff's fault that we don't know what it looks like until we go out there. So that's why we have on our filing guidelines, the paragraph, it says, any one of these filings coming in is subject to the site visit. So I think when staff was helping, we hear camper, it's, not that big. You go out there and I took a picture, I can bring it up. It's huge. And so then I didn't see this, I saw the property line staking, but the staking wasn't done for the area of the driveway. Is that correct? I didn't see the staking for the corners of the driveway.
The corners of the driveway, no, the staking was just the property line. And then if I may, one of your, or I don't know, Emil?
Emil, yeah.
Actually came out, and he came out to take a look at the property, and then At that point, he had told me what I needed to do, which I got the information from Peter, and then I came to the office to sit down and get some help to fill out the paperwork. So he came out before I actually filled the paperwork out, and then I got the help from the office to fill out the paperwork.
It's one of those things on the guideline that it doesn't really fit as if somebody was coming in and doing an addition. I mean, you're talking about, this is hardscape, it's gravel.
Right.
So we have like the addition guidelines for what you need for an addition. We have guidelines for what you need to do with the patio. So we don't have one that says, what if you want to put a big gravel driveway just outside of 65 feet to 100? And this is one of these where you go out and look at it and you have an undisturbed 50-foot buffer. You're losing a chance for all those, that buffer zone to be planted. That's all I wanted to
Exactly.
say.
That's my concern.
Bill?
Yeah, I'd just like to support Darcy and Peter on that. It seems to me like it should have some kind of mitigation.
Or a consideration, as the woman who is speaking here, if it is more suitable with less of an impact on the other side, and I don't know. Is that an option which would be a better overall environmental effect?
It is an option that we did consider ourselves, but on that side of the property, our whole entire septic system and leaching field is on that side. So the right side of our driveway, other than a lawnmower, that's pretty much where that stops.
Louise?
It seems to me that if we want some mitigation, this has to be an NOI, because we can't have mitigation with just an RDA.
Yeah, that's the problem.
The point.
Let me try this.
Tom, we've had some situations before, very few, where the applicant has proposed mitigation. The issue with mitigation generally is, how do you monitor it? How do you follow up on it to make sure it's the right calculation in the right location? I'm on the fence on that issue, but I don't want to just let it be assumed that you have to have an NOI if there's mitigation. The question is, in what way is the mitigation part of the plan? And I think that would be more determinative, in my opinion, than the presence of mitigation. That's my view.
Let me try a motion and see how it goes from there. Could I have a motions to approve this project as a positive determination require an NOI so that we can determine the mitigation?
So moved.
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Opposed? 5-2. So you need to file an NOI.
So I don't have a problem filing that, but what is that? I don't know what that is.
You can check with the office, and office can give you a checklist of what need to be filed with the NOI.
It's a NOI?
Yeah.
It's excuse me, a notice of intent, but it would require stamped engineering plans, and the engineer will take you through the process.
And for the applicant, I think the big reason is so that we can think about mitigation, so that it's a balance. It's highly likely that you're going to get a ability to park your vehicle off the road, but this allows then for a benefit for the buffer zone to your wetland there. So it's, hopefully will be a win for you, but also a win for the environment.
Okay.
And we can't do that in an RDA. So please accept that with an understanding that, at least from this commissioner, I fully expect to see you again and smile and give you what you want.
So when you say a win for the environment, just so I understand a little better, what exactly do you mean by that?
So my understanding, the applicant or the consultant will probably help you with that, is that between the wetland and your house, that's all within a 50-foot, we call a buffer zone, that is there to absorb nutrients. It's there to provide habitat, and it's an area that is a benefit for the overall environment. So a win there, or a mitigation, would be that you bring in some plantings in there. You get some vegetation, native vegetation that's growing in there. You make the habitat better for, you know, animals, amphibians, things like that. So it's a balance. You get a whole bunch of land here that you can park your vehicle on, and the environment's going to get some land in here for mitigation.
So I think I went through that process already with Fred, though, which that was stamped and approved back in June 15, 2018, which is not a part of that packet, but I would assume it's in your files, because I have the copy of it here.
I'll answer your, if you want to come in with that package. I don't know whether he was offering mitigation, or you were offering mitigation because you need to take some trees down or something, but that is something different than this.
But if that exists in the record,
Yeah.
it certainly becomes pertinent. We just don't have it
Right.
in front of us.
Okay, sounds, thank you
So-
so much.
You can talk to the office and Darcy or Ed, and to clarify what is the requirement for the NOI filing.
So just so I'm clear, so if this already exists, what more could we put back here then? Just out of curiosity.
Well, talk to the staff.
Okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.
We have 3 NOI tonight. Brandon J. Brazos, reconstruct existing open deck and screen porch, beach nourishments and landscaping, including poison ivy control at 90 Lake Drive, Centerville, as shown on the Assessors Maps 230, parcel 082.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Arlene Wilson, A.M. Wilson Associates, here for the applicants, the Brazos. I guess I owe you an apology because not all the elements of this project were apparently visible. I understand from meeting with Darcy on Friday afternoon late and talking with John coming up the stairs, that it was hard to identify what was going on here, and I know there are a lot of moving parts. So, the photographs that I've just handed out, I thought might be helpful to people who are on the site and could visualize standing in the left side yard and looking at the water. This property is a little better than 2/10 of an acre on the southerly side of Lake Wequacket. It has about 140 linear feet of shore frontage, and the house appears to have been built in about 1958, so that's well prior to the Wetlands Protection Act. No one would allow the house to be built in this particular location today. There's also a seasonal dock, which likely was not in the water when any of you were there, but it was approved by the commission in 1991. The resources at the site are intermittent wooded swamp along the edge, land under the waters of Wequacket Lake. And I had a memo from Darcy, from Tom through Darcy, about the pond elevation. We have used on this plan 32.7 as the elevation of the lake. It is the same elevation that we used for the property next door in late in the fall of 2017. And for the property next to the west of that, without the adjustment for the change in datum to, for the next one over, I think we're talking about 0.2 of a foot, Tom? Is that, so we'll straighten that out, but I would like to know where your numbers actually come from before we change this, because now I've had 2 surveyors agree with the number that we're showing on the plan. So, the only other issue there is that carrying a water elevation out to a 3rd decimal point is, I've had a number of people tell me that's not realistic. Water isn't a static elevation, and to get it out to 0.10 of a foot is probably not realistic. But be that as it may, the project itself has 3 major components. The easiest one, I think, for everybody to deal with is the reconstruction of the open deck and the screen porch. Those of you who have been out there know that the screen porch foundation has quite a sizable crack. And apparently the support system for the open deck is at the end of its life as well. And so we're proposing to take down both of those pieces of construction and replace them in the same footprint as currently. The screen room will have a foundation that will meet the building code. It'll be closed in and roofed over the way the current one is. It does not have heat. The open deck will be on sonotube supports. It has a couple of minor changes that all benefit the Commission's regulations, I believe. Currently, there are 2 sets of stairs that run off of that open deck, one to the west and one to the north. Both of those sets of stairs are going and not to be replaced. Instead, there will be a new set of stairs that will predominantly set back into the footprint of the open deck. So there's about 32 square feet, 32 and a half square feet, less hardscape in the 50 with the proposed plan. The second element is the beach nourishment. Historically, from looking at aerial photographs and scratching around under the leaf and litter and pine needles, you can see that the beach here ran off of the west corner of the open deck and the east side of that little concrete retaining wall at the end of the path that goes down the east side of the water. So what we're proposing is to restore that beach, breaking it off and bringing in something between 4 and 6 inches of beach nourishment. It is probably about 8 cubic yards of material, not very much. In return, there is an open area to the east, to the west of the existing beach. Looks like people have pulled their boats up in that area historically, and the vegetation has been knocked back. So we're proposing to revegetate that area with wetland vegetation. So it will restore about 60 square feet of wetland to the west side of the beach. That's an area sort of immediately north of the sunroom. There are also a series of stumps that stick up anything from 4 to 6 inches, both in the side yard and then close to the area where we want to restore that wetland. John said he couldn't find them. I have the worst hand-eye coordination in the universe, and I every time I've been out there, I've tripped on at least one of them. The NOI proposed pulling them and filling the divots. Darcy suggested that the commission might be happier if we grind them and plant over, and we're happy to do that instead of pulling them. I don't know how easy that's going to be with the 3 that are down at the water's edge, but we'll certainly give it a shot. And if there is a real problem with that, we'll come back to an afternoon meeting, I guess, and talk to you about it. And then there are some other general landscape issues. Mrs. Brazel is deathly allergic to poison ivy. She apparently gets it every time she steps out the door here. And so we want to be able to treat it across the property wherever it exists. It'll be done by a person with appropriate certifications, and obviously the commission will be informed of who that person is going to be, what firm, and what material they'll be using for the poison ivy control. There is to the west, to the east of the beach within the wetland, a large gray willow that's had a significant amount of storm damage. We would like to cut that and replace it as close as we can with a red maple. And then down along the east sideline, there is an old chain link fence. In the series of storms a year ago fall, when a lot of the trees in the neighborhood were lost, that chain link fence sustained a great deal of damage. Mr. Brazel would like to pull it out and not replace it, but in the 6 or 8 feet closest to the fence where it's covered with vines and invasives, he'd like to get rid of those and replant with native materials. And I'd be happy to try and answer questions.
Just for the clarifications, the Wauquaca Lake, the known elevation is 34 feet, and the reference datum is NGVD 29. The 33 that that Arlene was talking about is we changed the datum to NAVD 88. And at that time, this is 2017, the memo that I wrote was just strictly a conversion from that datum to NAVD 88 datum. So I have 33. Even though I'm an engineer, I'm not going into the third decimal place. That's why the number is, I use 33 instead of 32.963. That's my numbers. So.
So that number comes from you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, based on 34 in the whole historical data.
Okay.
I changed the datum, that's all.
It's probably not worth arguing in front of
No.
the whole commission this
No.
evening, but we should talk about that later.
Bill?
I don't have any problems with the structural improvements.
Is your mic on? Make sure you talk to the mic.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with the structural improvements, the deck, because it's going to be in the same footprint. But I do have some questions and concerns about your beach management. That beach fringe that's going to be restored to wetlands, what kind of plants are you putting in there? What is that? Wetlands plant restoration?
In the area we're going to restore, it's actually in the notice of intent, we're talking about swamp azalea, sweet gale, leatherleaf, buttonbush, and maleberry.
And they're right on the edge of the water?
They are.
Okay.
At least this year they are. If we have another drought year like this, they'll be in the dry. So what we want to plant are materials that have some tolerance for drought, but
So
could be
when I saw that, I
submerged most
was
of the
thinking,
time.
it said, on your plan, it said beach fringe to be restored, and I was afraid that you were dumping sand in there, and that's good. You're not. It's just vegetation.
No, plants,
But you-
all plants.
But, good, and so that's, I think that's fine. And then you have the beach nourishment in two areas, just to the right and the left of the house. And I noticed that you have a very, very narrow buffer. I mean, this house is sitting practically on the water. And as you know, in that 0 to 50, we like to have vegetative buffer. And, you know, by whatever training, I'm new to the commission, I've taken all kinds of MAC training and on wetlands and you want to have a buffer. You want to have a vegetated buffer. And when you end up having, you're going to basically remove whatever is there, whatever vegetation, whatever leaves, whatever, and you end up putting sand, you know, you're not creating that vegetated buffer to filter it. And so I have, I have an issue with that, but on the plan, it suggests that the one on the right, on the east side, I guess, is that right up against the water's edge, or is there some kind of little vegetated buffer that you're, you know, not dumping sand?
Yeah, there's essentially no vegetation in either of the edges where we want to restore the beach. It's covered with detritus fill, so it's leaf litter and pine needles and.
So you're literally dumping sand right up to the water's edge then?
It will be, as we have done before, it'll be deeper on the house edge, and it'll feather toward the pond. There is sand in the pond edge at this location. So it's not like some of the areas that you see where there's aquatic vegetation or emergent vegetation at the pond edge. Here, the beach has been used so much historically that immediately adjacent to what we're showing as the edge of the pond, there's really nothing growing. So if you look at the photograph, you'll see what we're going to do is rake up the dead material and put another veneer of beach sand down on top.
Louise.
I understand your concerns, and in the protocol in the NOI, we have said that we will install a row of staked hay bales at the water's edge, the limit of the beach, before work begins, although the few cubic yards of material are probably going to be brought to the site in a small dump truck. It'll be spread by hand. And so it'll be easy to control and make sure that the material doesn't spread too far into the water. In return for that, the existing beach unvegetated pond shore edge is going to be replanted on the west side of that beach, so that, you know, there's a benefit that's being proposed in addition to, or in return for, maintaining the bathing beach area.
Are you all set, Bill?
I guess I am. I'm not happy, but.
Louise?
Let's see, you mentioned that there's a lot of vines and junk growing along the chain link fence that is going to be removed, and the property owner would like to remove all that stuff and replace it with plants, but your drawing doesn't show that. And I think it's a great idea. When I was there, I was looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. And I'm happy that that's what they want to do, but you need to put it on your drawing. It's not there. Can you
I'm having a
understand what
little
I'm
trouble
saying?
understanding you, Louise.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You had said that the that there's a lot of vine and junk stuff growing
Right.
along the chain link fence that you plan to remove, and that the property owner would like to remove that and replant it.
Right.
I think it's a great idea, but my problem is you don't have that indicated in your drawing, and you need to do that and have a landscape plan, what you're going to put there.
We're happy to provide that for you.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Yeah, I walked in with Arlene, and I was very critical because nothing on this property was staked. The driveway wasn't staked, nothing was staked. Where the beach is going to be nourished wasn't staked, but having expressed that opinion before, I'll let it go, Arlene, again. But a couple of other things. First, on the chain link fence, I noticed the same thing. When he removes that, he's going to destroy a tremendous amount of vegetation. So I would like to see a condition that a revegetation of that area plan must be submitted to staff for approval.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of vegetation that's going to be
that's
coming
fine.
out there. Secondly, I agree with Bill. I have no problem with the structural changes, as long as they are exactly what's there right now, with the modifications you said about the stairs, which is fine. With regard, and this was confusing to me, and I was going to ask Bill, on the plan, where you've got the stump, the gray willow to be removed and the stumps, as I'm looking at it to the west side of that, it says beach fringe to be restored, and the word beach is written in there. Now, is that going to be a beach, or, as
No.
Bill asked you, is that going to be a reconstructed wetland?
That's going to be planting, so that's where the new wetland is going. If you look in the notice of intent, there is a little planting plan for that area, John.
Okay.
So that's,
I didn't see it, but I just saw here where it's, the word beach is there.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to confirm with,
That was my concern.
yeah, so I'm sort of echoing what Bill said. That's not beach, that's going to be a restored wetland, correct?
that's going to be restored wetland.
Okay, we just need to make sure that that's clear. I
We
didn't
can,
see that.
we
That's
can
on
change
Exhibit
the
F.
label on the plan to make it clear.
Under the landscape sketch.
Yep.
Okay.
Exhibit F.
Okay, great. In terms of the restored sand, which I know Bill has trouble with, those have to be marked, right? Before and after, Darcy? Don't we usually require those to be staked so we know how far left, how far right, and how far in and how far out it's going to go?
You're talking about the beach nourishment?
Yes.
Okay, so I did believe, and I had mentioned to Arlene, that the beach area that she wants to restore should have been staked. The staking that other times that we talk about is when we have staking and we're letting them know that they should be keeping it outside of the higher spring watermark, which that is not what she's asking here. It would be going, what I understand is it would be going down into the water's edge at the 32.
We'll go to the
So-
water's edge.
Yes, that should be staked on either side as far as how far we were going to have the edges of the beach, but it wouldn't have to be staked, the front part of the beach out along the water.
But going to that question, and I think Bill was getting to this, we usually allow down to the water or just off the water, not into the water. Is this
No.
a beach nourishment that's going to go into the water? And that has to do, Tom, with your NGVD data. I'm just confused about that.
Usually, we allow the beach nourishment on the upland side of the mean high water
Right.
mark. So in this case, if the elevation is 33, then it would be above 33.
Okay, so don't we need to clarify that somewhere? Because I'm confused about that, because I don't think we should change what we have traditionally approved.
Right.
Let's not add to it.
Right.
We could
So,
do that as a condition it that
okay,
way.
we can condition it somehow to that effect.
John, I think if we use the same conditions that we used in the Brooks project over on Turn Lane, which required staking
Yeah.
for the limits, but also to put that row of hay bales in at the limit of the pond edge, so at elevation 33, whatever the tenths are. So that will
Okay.
go in, we'll take pictures
Great.
before the beach nourishment goes
Super,
on.
that
and
addresses
they'll-
that concern.
Yeah.
The last one's kind of a minor thing, that gray willow on the east side of the property, it looks like it was kind of buried amongst a whole bunch of other things. It wasn't standalone, and again, nothing was marked, so I had trouble seeing it.
Yeah,
And if what I think I saw was correct, how are you gonna get that out of there without destroying a lot of other stuff? And how are you gonna replant in there?
Yeah, that, they're just going to go in and cut that one down.
Out of the ground?
And then poke around a little bit and find a space where they can put a small red maple.
I'm just afraid you're gonna cause more damage than, you know.
Well,
than you
we're
can
happy to
solve.
plant the red maple a little further landward if you think that's
I don't know.
suitable.
Darcy, what, oh. Darcy, did you see that? I mean, am I raising concern about where that gray willow is on the east side of
Yeah.
the property? How they're gonna get it out of there and how they're gonna replant? It looked like it was all jammed up as it was.
I didn't think the gray willow was that tangled into,
Well,
Yeah.
if you're happy with it, then
Okay.
who am I to
I'm sorry,
question it?
we were talking, I was still kind of lost about the staking along the edge of the lake, because I thought we were talking about it going, when we were reviewing the plan, that the sand was going to be going down into the water. So you're saying the staking is going to be right at the 32.7?
That's where the hay bale line will go.
Okay, and, all right, so the sand is staying above got it.
Yes.
Yes, I apologize. So we would want to have that staked
Okay,
staked
so
out.
you're okay with it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The gray willow, if you don't think it's, I don't know how she's gonna do it, but if you think they could cut it down and replant something there, good luck.
Well, I think it's also the area where you're taking a lot of the other invasives out, right? The gray willow, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and one other thing, there is a tremendous amount of poison ivy there. I mean, it's rampant on the west side there especially.
I'm sorry,
It's on
John.
the east side.
Poison ivy.
It's on the east.
Oh, yeah.
East side.
Oh, it's on the east side? I
Yeah,
thought it
east
was on
side,
the west side
to
too.
the right.
It's everywhere, but it's predominantly to the west of the beach.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Oh, really?
But it's
Okay.
every place.
I mean, right here, right over there, it was really, it
all
looked
right.
to me like it was.
I
all
looked
poison
at
ivy.
both places.
I'm just wondering, and I don't know enough about it, but if you start killing all of that, is there a possibility of killing the surrounding vegetation? And that would worry me, so that has to be conditioned that if it is, there's gonna be replanting required in that area. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
There's several herbicides that are pretty
Right.
specific to poison ivy.
I just don't know if that's gonna cause damage to all the other growth there,
Yeah,
which we certainly don't wanna lose.
It probably will benefit a few of the trees that is growing up because it's beginning
Yeah.
to choke them out pretty significantly.
It's rampant. I mean, it was rampant. I sure wouldn't want to walk in it. Okay, well, if Darcy is happy with that, I'm okay too, but.
Yeah, there was one, I did speak to Arlene, I think the invasive, areas of the proposed invasive removal should be shown on a revised plan with underneath it stating replanting where necessary.
Right, super. Great, thank you. That's it.
Pete?
I have sort of three questions here. Dr. Hearn has brought to our attention over the past year the negative effects observed by many other communities and full-blown states in their regulations as in regards to, quote, beach nourishment. Sand is not a good environment for anyone except for a human being. We have a fairly big beach here. I understand tradition, so I'm less hesitant to say no beach nourishment, but just because something was historical, for instance, when was the last time that this beach was nourished with sand?
I don't know, Pete.
So probably a long time ago. And a long time ago, the entire Cape was clear-cut, but we don't allow clear-cutting. So to say that a beach is historically been nourished, well, when we don't really know when the last time sand was dumped here. So this commissioner, trying to split the baby, is not so keen with having such a large beach, quote, nourished. Give them some beach. I'm thrilled with the wetland restoration. So that's definitely good. And the gray willows, yeah, you're not going to pull them, good, just cross-hatch them and get some other better vegetation in there. Second question, there are a lot of stumps here. When were they trees? Do we have any idea when they were trees? And were they cut down with the knowledge and okay of this commission?
The trees that are in the west side of the front yard, or the stumps that are there, they've been there a long time, because when we worked on the property next door, the Schumann property, those were stumps. I think some of them that are closer to the water came down in or around the 2018 series of storms. My understanding is the mess that was made out of the chain link fence was a year ago fall with the series of 3. They started life on the opposite side of the fence. I don't know whether people got permission or not.
Yeah, so, you know, there's been a large removal of significant vegetation over the decade or decades without any input, I presume, from us in terms of environmental management or habitat management. So when you bring back vegetation, I'd like to see some trees coming back, not just one red maple.
No, along that property line, when that fence comes out,
Okay.
those are going to be
But
predominantly
I'm sort of
trees.
to the west side of this, you
Right.
know, you got all these stumps.
Yeah.
Again, I'm keen with giving you some beach, and you got a great view out there, but all these stumps and sort of this removal of large amounts of vegetation within, quote, the buffer zone, and I'd like to see something back there that was going to hold down sediment. It's going to provide some shade in the summertime for both the house and or sunbathers. I know I need shade. So I would like to see some complexity to the vegetation that you're bringing back in for restoration. Is there one more thing? No, I think I got it. So last time it was nourished, we can't put on that. I would like to see it smaller and get some diversity into the replanting. Thank you.
Larry?
Arlene, I've got a couple of questions and some comments. First, I'm going to look at, if you look at that drawing way up, it looks like Florida upside down going up that way. That property is deceptive from my observations, because when I was looking at it, there was water overlapping it. It doesn't look, this makes it look like it's land going up there, but there really isn't much surface, is there?
It's wet. It's a wooded swamp,
That's a good way of putting it. Okay, so your ability to do planting in that area is probably minimal. Is that the way you'd look at it? The other thing is that, not the other, but when I was there, I had the good fortune to have Mr. Brazel show me a lot of things. And I looked at it sequentially. It was real easy to deal with the reconstruction of the deck and the porch and all that. It was easy to get that behind it. And it was somewhat easy to figure out the west side with respect to the stump removal. Mr. Brazel told me he'd lived there since 2016 is when they bought it, he said. So that's 6 years. And in the process, he'd seen something about beaches being more beach than is there now, but that really is not controlling at this point. So I looked at sequentially as you've got it 1, 2, and 3, and I would do 1, 3, and 2 but only by that I mean that after the reconstruction, you're going to deal with landscape improvements and then do beach nourishment later. So that being said, what I'm thinking is that I'd recommend that there be measurements taken of the beach, just the depths and the width, so we have something on there to know how many square feet, cubic feet, of course, would include vertically, but I'd recommend that So that would help us define the precise location of the beach. And I actually see beach nourishment with the limits as to the edge of the lake and the reconstructed deck as being beneficial. By that, I mean, it's going to be a stable area. It's not going to be overly done. If it was grass or something else, it wouldn't be usable, or it would be tread upon. But I think it's offset by the proposed revegetation, as you've described it, on either ends of the beach. That's the way I look at it. So otherwise, I really don't have any other questions, because everybody else has asked plenty of questions of you.
Just to clarify Larry's comment, the distance-wise, so on the drawing, we need the distance from the water's edge to the edge of the cobblestone. I think the cobblestone stays, right?
I'm sorry.
Cobblestone?
Yeah.
So I need the
yeah.
distance from the water edge to the cobblestone.
Yeah.
So to define it for the depths and the width. Any other question from the commissioner? No? Any public comment on this? None. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the, well, I mean, we can talk about the water elevations, why, and then the distance from the water edge to the cobblestone edge. And we need a revegetation plan, landscaping plans to show the revegetations for the area and to be submitted to the staff for review. And we also need to stake out the water edge elevations and the right side and the left side of the proposed beach nourishment area before the actual beach nourishment to occur. John?
Stumps to be ground,
Stump to be ground.
not pulled.
Yeah. What else did I miss?
And the proposed invasive areas
Should
for
be on the
removals
plan.
should be identified, with, best that you can. but
And
hash marked or
replanted
something.
if necessary.
Right, and replant it as necessary. That's it.
Second.
All in favor? Oppose?
Which way did Bill,
5-2?
you can abstain. You can abstain. Yes, no, or abstain, Bill.
I will go with it. I will vote yes, reluctantly.
Okay. 6-1.
6-1, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
That was tough.
The second NOI, Corey A. Griffin, trustee, Glen Lane Nominal Trust, modification of driveway at 49 Main Street, Austerville, as shown on the Assessors Map 185,
They
parcel
recycle.
020. Arlene.
What was this one? Oh, 49 Main Street.
Arlene Wilson, AM Wilson Associates, here for the applicant. This one got staked.
It wasn't when I was there.
It was today.
It wasn't last Tuesday.
So this is a site that I think the commission is relatively familiar with.
Yeah, been there a few times.
But Mr. Zink, who is the owner and inhabitant here, has a lot of trouble with his driveway. And he has 3 adult children who all have their own cars. And when they are at the house, it is all but impossible to turn around in this driveway. And it certainly is ill-advised to back out onto Main Street at this location because people drive down the 35-mile-an-hour road at 50, and there's a vertical curve here, so you can't really see, and lots of hedges, and so he has asked us to look at designing a semicircular drive in the front so that people don't have to back out. And what we are proposing is to take the area in the middle of that driveway extension, depress it, and plant it with facultative woody materials so that it is a woody rain garden that will take the water from the new driveway and a little bit from the existing driveway and make sure that it doesn't travel overland into the adjacent salt marsh. The area here is higher than the drainage system for the existing driveway. I don't know how many of you noticed, but there is a catch basin in the southeast corner of the parking area, the bottom of which couldn't be more than 1.5 feet above groundwater. So the less water that goes in there, the better off we'll be. The problem with this site and the plan that I gave you is actually the plan that's in the file, but I know that plan is very busy, and from talking with Darcy Friday afternoon, it is hard to locate things on it, so all I did was color up. So we've colored the limit of the wetland and in green, solid green, and the dashed green is the 50-foot from the BVW. The solid orange is the town coastal bank, and the dashed orange is 50 feet from it. And you can see that there's not much on this site that isn't in the 50-foot buffer. We made an attempt with what was in the filing to provide mitigation predominantly in the new driveway circle and 2 areas adjacent to the existing cabana where I don't quite know, excuse me, what happened to the high marsh vegetation in those 2 areas, but it's not doing well at all. And so we're proposing to replant those 2 areas with high tide bush so that it maintains the marsh edge at that location and gives the salt marsh a place to sort of roll back as we get problems with increasing tide elevations. I was informed that the commission thought we should try and get a little more mitigation area because those 3 areas alone came up short by almost 1,000 square feet on required mitigation. I spoke with Mr. Zink this morning. He was unavailable until then. So I apologize for not actually having a planting plan for you, but the second sheet in the handout shows 3 additional locations for mitigation. And you can see them on the photograph that is also part of what I handed out. So right now, below the main part of the house where that octagonal wooden deck comes out is grass right down that slope. There is a set of stairs that comes off the patio there, and the original plan for the house actually showed stone steps set into that bank. I guess those stairs were never constructed. But what we're proposing, having talked with him, or providing additional mitigation on that slope would probably be low woody ground cover. That's his primary view shed, apparently. So we've got those two areas, and then another 3 to 4 foot strip along the existing edge, the swath of grass in the flat that comes from the end of the driveway parking area down in front of the cabana used to be the driveway that accessed the cabana when it was a garage. What we want to try and do is to maintain that access, both for construction purposes, if work needs to get done on the cabana itself or the upper portion of the pier, or for emergency access should, God forbid, there ever be an accident and the EMTs need to get down there. So that's why we've left that. This plan is still about 400 square feet short in mitigation. We talked today about the potential for taking some of the grass at the front of the house. The problem with that is that most of it is the only area on the property that's outside the 100-foot buffer. And that's where the septic system is, and you really don't want to plant woody stuff over your septic system. So Mr. Zink would clearly request the ability to pay an in lieu fee for the difference on the mitigation here, which would be $1,323. If the commission were willing to allow that, you would have to make a finding that it's mitigation constrained. And if the commission is willing to go along with that, then we'll provide the planting plan either to staff, or if you want us to come back so you can see it, we'll come back for a continuance.
Question from the commissioner, Louise.
Let's see, you said that you weren't sure what happened to the plantings that were along the marsh's edge, and you were going to put high tide bush there. Was that part of a mitigation area that had to do with earlier construction?
The additional strip that we're proposing was beyond anything that was required to be left in its natural state previously.
So we're not double dipping on mitigation, existing mitigation?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. When I was there, and it was not staked, that was a week ago today, I actually had the experience of being in the driveway with 2 other cars, and one of those cars needed to get out. And I was in the parking area, and it was a piece of cake. So, you know, I sympathize with the property owner, but it's not as bad as it might be, for sure. There was someone working there, and when I arrived, and so I had to move so that he could get out, and it was quite easy. That being said, if I look at this plan, it seems to me you could eke out some more in the area that is now called lawn, and still and get some more mitigation in there. You're talking about a pretty wide path down to the cabana, and I understand that you need to have space for emergency vehicles and so forth and so on. But I mean, most of us talk about 4-foot wide paths down to structures and down to the shoreline and down to piers and so forth and so on. And even with that wide path, the area that is just south of the two triangular areas that you're showing as mitigation, I think that you could be filling in there some as well. So I guess I would throw out the challenge that can't you get a little more? I mean, 400 and some square feet is kind of like 20 by 20, which is not a whole lot, especially for a property that is this large. And I know that it's, you know, in the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot and so forth, so it's a challenge, but I just kind of feel like there are some places that you could be using for mitigation that you haven't gone on yet.
Larry?
I'm going to take an overview, Arlene, with your help. First of all, we're dealing with two 50s here. One is green and one is orange. And the existing driveway has a little back-out place, and back out of the garage, you back into that and get out of there. But it looks to me like if that portion of the driveway was expanded towards the water, you're rated to the 200-foot riverfront. I don't know, that's not where you want to go, but I think that conceptually, visually, that's what somebody might think. I don't know how you could expand that turning around place, and I've got a very short little car, and I drove down there the other day, and there were 4 cars there, and I had to back out into South Main, and it's not a pleasant sight. The people, it's Indianapolis to some of the people that drive on that road. So I am familiar with the concept that this turnaround or this road was going to put in there, and I was wondering where you were going to get the curb cut, and I see where that's going to be. And so, and at first glance, I wonder how much of this is really a portion of land that's in a 50-foot buffer that's going to require mitigation, not mediation. So in that sense, I now see how you've drawn the calculations, and I also understand from what you've said tonight and what Louise raised the question briefly is coming in the driveway on the left side, there's no room to vegetate in there beyond the existing shrubs that are there. That, you know, on the map, it would look like that would be a logical place to put it. My only other thought is whether or not mitigation could be planted. Well, Pete's pointing out one side, there's 2 sides to this lot. This is not a big lot because so much of it's totally undevelopable. And also, the house, as we know, was torn down several years ago and a new house was put there. So that's there. So the question is whether or not what would be, I'm looking for the north-south, this is on the, from Main Street to the water, that boundary. Is there any room for vegetation before you get to the cabana on that side? You've got some of it already, and you may have already filled that up. And on the other side, could some vegetation be put between what's marked as the lawn and used to be the driveway that went down there? Is there any more room to put something on that side? I am very comfortable with declaring this a site mitigation constrained property. I guess the question becomes, do we have to quantify that? Do we have to describe what the total mitigation required is and what land is available? And if so, is that a calculation that we should be including as a finding? I think it is, but even when that does it, does that then convert to the fee in lieu, which I guess it does. So those are my comments. I think you've done all you can do here. You can't pull a rabbit out of a hat when there's no more rabbits in the hat. So in that sense, I think you've done what you can do. And I think that raising the questions about other mitigation is appropriate, but I think sometimes we can just put so much mitigation in, and that's where I am. Thank you.
I'll go Pete, and then John, and then Bill.
Yeah, actually, I think this is a pretty good plan. I really like, I've got young'uns in cars, I empathize, and you don't want them backing out. So I really like your circular drive here around a woody catch basin. Great idea. You've done an awful lot with the mitigation. I sort of pointed to Larry as he was saying, possibly, again, you know better than me, right along that western edge between the triangle coming down from the dwelling, right on that western boundary down to the cabana. If you can't get something there, I'm like Larry, I would find this constrained if you can't get more. But I think this is a pretty good, you've done a good job here.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with Larry and Peter on this, not unusual. I think it's a very good plan. I think what you propose is excellent. And I have to admit, when I drove out Floyd coming out, you're right, it's a nightmare trying to get onto Main Street, the curve, the speed, et cetera. So I'm very much in favor of this. I think the plan you put together is good. However, I agree with Louise. This is a lot of room in this property that I think, I mean, you could say he needs an ambulance to get down there, whatever, but to put in the 400 square feet of additional mitigation, I think is something you really should do. I would, and I voted on a lot of properties that we quote are mitigation, are constrained, and therefore will take a fee. I don't see that here, Arlene. You gotta believe you could find some room here. And I don't disagree with Peter and Larry, but they're trying to find it for you, but I think, you know, if you put the effort in, you're gonna find it. So I would not support mitigation constrained finding in this matter.
Bill?
Yeah, I totally agree with John and Louise. I don't see why the lawn can't yield some additional mitigation. And I did visit the site yesterday. There was only one car there, no big deal turning around, but I can well imagine if there were 3 or 4 cars, you know, you're going to have a problem. And I think I support having that new driveway, circular driveway, but I think you can mitigate, and I really don't like the idea of the in lieu fee thing. I would reject that completely.
Any more comment from the commissioner?
I have one.
Darcy?
I have concern because I did see cutting over the edge of what was not supposed to be cut along the top of the bank. And I don't see that this landscaping plan would be providing any demarcation yet for the mitigation, so we need that added. I don't know if I could support a staff being mitigation constraint. A lot of times the staff would ask, the commission would ask staff's opinion on that. I still think there's room. And how, as far as the long, narrow border one where I did see the cutting, what is the width of that? I can't tell when it's just drawn in with magic marker. Is it only one width of shrubs along there that you're thinking, or two?
It varies, but on average, it's 3.5 feet, Darcy. So it's one additional row of shrubs. And as we discussed, I think on Friday afternoon, I don't know why the demarcation for the native buffer that runs along the edge of that lawn wasn't required to be brought the whole way, but we're certainly happy to figure out some kind of demarcation that would run the length of that thing so that there wouldn't be any cutting in the future. As I said, the landscape contractors were there last week. Mr. Zink said he ran out to do some errands and came back, and they were cutting over the edge, and he screamed at them sufficiently that they left. But he's aware of that problem and will solve it with the revised plan. We're happy to accommodate. I know this would be a lot for Darcy to review on her own, and so if the commission wants us to come back in 2 weeks with the planting plan, that's fine, but I did want to get the sense of whether the commission thought this was sufficient or not, so that we could go ahead and finish it up.
I think it's difficult, I mean, I know the two areas you originally were recommending for mitigation, it was kind of common sense where it was going to be placed, but you didn't have, when we were talking about the project being staked, when I went there, it was staked, except for you didn't have the mitigation area staked. It makes it really difficult when we're trying to look at this plan, you're not there at the site, and you can't see the or, the staking or whatever you want for the mitigation. So that makes it difficult. And I'd have to say, I would support, otherwise I support the project, because when I was there, I had a very difficult time. First, I was going to try to back out, and then I'm like, oh, no. And there were only 2 cars there, and it was just because of the way they were parked. I had to do like a 15-point turn to get out of there. So I had a really hard time getting out of there.
So for myself, I don't have a problem about the circular drive. I mean, you need that. It's nice to have that when you go in and out of the property. The only thing that I think this is not a constrained site, and you should be able to find 400 square feet as the mitigations area on the site plans. So when you come back, show us all the mitigation area that you needed, and with the mitigation, with the demarcations that you needed to show it to us.
And we'll have an opportunity to put the areas on the engineering drawing and get an exact amount as well.
Right. So the only time I have is August the 16th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
Any public comment on this? None. Could I have a motion to have a continuance to August the 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Is approved. Thanks.
Thank you.
The last NOI is Lynn Osborne, proposed additions, mitigations, and associated site improvement at 154 Breakwater Shore Drive, Hyannis, and so on the assessors map 306, parcel 165. This application does not have a DEP number issued yet, so just keep that in mind.
Tom, can we specify the date of the plan that we're looking at? Because we got so many, just so we're all looking at the same time. Which one, George?
Good evening. I'm Brian Weiner with Coastal Engineering, Civil Engineer. The correct plan, it's dated July 19th.
There's a mitigation plan dated July 20th.
That's correct. There was a supplemental
Right.
added. It was by Phil Cheney.
It's the one I have on the screen. It was submitted with the original notice of intent.
Yeah, I have a hard copy here if it's helpful. It was submitted as supplemental information, I believe, the next day.
The one looking at is 719,
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I've got. Not the 20th.
not 720, so.
No. The mitigation plan is July 20th.
That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
I don't think I even have that.
When?
Please identify yourself, because I think this is the first time we see you here.
Again, good evening. I'm Brian Weiner, a civil engineer with Coastal Engineering.
Okay.
With me here this evening is Lynn Osborne, who's part of the design team and has done the architecture work for the project. I can continue when it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we've, submitted our site plan, which shows renovations to an existing house. As part of that work, there are 2 cantilevered additions, and that totals approximately 49 square feet. And if you look at our site plan from July 19th, those areas are hatched in. The actual addition is not in contact with the ground as they're, again, they're cantilevered, their second floor. And that total square footage, the 49 square feet, we've provided the mitigation plan at the 3-to-1 ratio, which is the lower right-hand corner of that plan, which,
Sorry. I was going
No.
to switch to the next, the supplemental batch. Do you want me to bring those up now, the supplemental batch? Or?
yeah, the supplemental plan's great. It shows the renovation with the addition, and it shows the mitigation also. So if you scroll up just a little bit, back down, back up, where we can get the hatch and the home addition in the same screen.
You all set?
Yeah, and we show the typical erosion control around the work area. So we have no disturbance, 0 to 50. The 49 square feet is in the 50 to 100 buffer.
Question from the commissioner? None? Larry?
Welcome to this universe. Could you clarify the resource areas? I know we got a flood zone here, but what other resource areas do you consider apply directly to the edge of the property and to the area where you propose to do the work?
Okay, so to the east is, we've identified wetland on our plan. It was flagged. We have the sequential flags on our existing condition plan. As far as the type of wetland, it's on the form. Let me, we're calling it a coastal resource area, and specifically land subject to coastal storm flowage
Okay.
on the application.
Right. So you're not dealing with a bordering vegetated wetland necessarily? I don't see any reference to that.
No, we're not, as far as I know, based on the information in the filing.
Well, visually, I didn't see anything, but you didn't mark anything that way, so. And the proposal is to do, it looks like you're going to go up, you're going to probably have to remove part of the building and then go up with a new master bedroom on an upper floor. And there's a bump out at the east end of it, and then an overlap that's going to come out over it's going to be a second floor elevation. And that's it, is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, and then there'll be some other removals of things like spiral staircases, but that doesn't affect us.
Correct, on the
So
interior.
have I summarized the work conceptually?
Agreed.
Can I just make a comment? There is a master bedroom there now on the second floor. It has a very low ceiling, and so we're not building a whole new master bedroom. We're just basically taking the roof off, reframing it with a higher ceiling, and doing these 2 additional little additions to give more living space in the master bedroom.
Okay, that does not affect us, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify what we were
Right.
looking at.
Right,
So we
that's-
could rule it out as being to talk about it. Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Can you identify yourself?
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry,
record?
I'm Lynn Osborne, and I'm the architect for the interior plans that we developed.
Nice job for that.
Thanks.
Any other question from the commissioner? None? Any public comment on this? None? You don't have the SE3 number, right? I just want to make sure.
I do not. We followed up today. It hasn't been issued yet by DEP.
Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted, but I need the continuance to August 16? Is that okay for you?
That's okay.
I'll
For the
second.
issuing of the
Are you
DEP
making the
number.
motion? I'll second it if you want, or do you want me to make the motion?
Oh, I make the motion already.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Nice architect plan.
Oh, thanks.
We have two continuances. The first one is Adam Hostler, rents and replace single-family home at 401 Ocean Street, Hyannis, as shown on Assessors Map 325, parcel 010. This is continued from July 5th, and the quorum is everyone. Mike here.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owners of the property tonight, and also Mr. Hofstadter, the builder, hopefully, of this project. I believe this was in front of the commission a couple of weeks ago, and there was some debris and other stuff on the site that the commission was concerned with. What I've done is I've identified all those areas that we saw as concerns based on the comments from the commission and from our own observations, and tried to identify every single one of those on our plan so that we can get permission to go in and take those debris and the other things out of those areas. The reason we're here tonight is to do a raise and replace of two structures, both of them within the 0 to 50-foot buffer. Currently, the first floor of the existing main house is at 8.8. To meet the minimum flood zone requirements, that has to be elevated up to 14.1. When my clients first bought the property, they were thinking about renovating the property, but because it needed substantial repair, it was more than 50% of the valuation of the existing building, and as a result, the buildings had to become in flood zone compliance. When they investigated the structure itself, it just wasn't feasible to lift it and maintain what was there. It wasn't structurally sound to lift it 5 feet in the air, so they've decided to do a raise and replace on both structures. That's the reason we're here tonight, to get permission to do that work. The other things that the areas that were identified as potential issues were, one of them was one of the pathways had debris on the sides of it. We're looking to remove that debris. There is also a fish pond that is in the yard area, the lawn area. After discussions with our client, our clients feel comfortable removing that fish pond and removing the deck and the stairway, the bridge, shall we say, over that fish pond. We're also looking to maintain all the trees and vegetation that are out there. We're not looking to cut anything. As you can see on the revised plan, I've moved the hay bale line to be inside the tree, that's the big large tree that's just south of the building, to be sure that everybody knows that tree is to be maintained. We're also going to replace some of the steps. We do have some more steps now because the building is 5 feet in the air. That triggers an extra 7 to 8 steps just to get down to the grade that is there right now. 5 feet basically works out to be 8.5, 9 steps. So that's you'll see that in the back. The buildings themselves, we're actually decreasing the lot coverage to reduce the area. You'll see up in the top portion of my drawing, I've got building comparison. That's basically the darker lines of the existing building and the lighter lines of the proposed. Sorry, the darkers are the proposed buildings. The lighter lines are the existing that are underneath, with the exception of those stairs that you see off of the back of the building, just so that we can get down to natural grade. Other than that, we're pretty much maintaining what's there. The site is extremely small, as you can all see. There is no space on the site that is outside the 50-foot coastal bank other than the driveway that exists. And that's just, we're looking to maintain that driveway as it is. There's just no space to move up in that area. Otherwise, we'd have to pull a driveway closer down to the water, which doesn't make sense either. It seemed to make more sense for us just to elevate the buildings where they are and create those elevated concrete walls to support the building in the flood zone, and then to leave everything else pretty much as it is. I guess with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions the commission may have.
Question from the commissioner, John.
Yeah, I was one of the commissioners when we looked at this property that said there's such a mess everywhere. The fish ponds, the gates, it was a mess. But I think, as I looked at this plan, I think you did a good job addressing those. So I thank you for that. I think you addressed the concerns that I had when I walked the property.
Any other question from the commissioner? None? Any public comment on this? Could I have a motion to approve this project as submitted with the revised plan date? Let me see what the date is.
7/12.
June 7/12.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Good to see you all again.
Good to see you too. The next continuance is Marshall M. Green, trustee, 210 Carriage Road Nominal Trust, to remove existing pool and propose construction of a new pool in a new locations, a house additions with patio replacement, elevated stairs down the coastal bank, relocations of hand enclosure, and landscaping to include bank restorations and associated improvements at 210 Carriage Road, Osterville, as shown on the assessors map 071 parcel 016. This is a continuance from July the 5th, and the quorum is everyone. Hi, Chuck.
Good evening. It's nice to finally see everyone in person. Chuck Rowland, Sullivan Engineering Consulting, Inc. I'm representing the Marshall M. Green trustees. With me today is Katrine from Wilkinson, who I'm sure you all know, as well as Chris from Landshope, and then one of the trustees, Mrs. George, is behind me. So, as discussed during the May 24th hearing, please find attached a revised landscape plan by Landshope, ecological plan, land management plan by Wilkinson, as well as the engineering plan that you have up in front of you there, all dated July 25th, 2022. The proposed site's been redesigned with a new pool location. We have moved the hen enclosure out of the 50-foot buffer and added mitigation planting in the 50-foot buffer to the coastal bank and the current lawn area. And we have the revised plan showing 1,107 square feet of reduction in hardscape in the 50-foot buffer. And when we get a chance, we'll switch over to the Wilkinson plan, which shows a revised vista corridor and has added another tree to the bank as part of the bank restoration. With that, I think that we've kind of provided pretty much everything that the commission was looking for in the last hearing. And we are, includes the vista, moving the hen house, maintaining a reduction in hardscape in the 50-foot buffer with mitigation planting in the lawn. Once this project is completed, there will be a substantial wetland habitat buffer enhancement with about 10,000 square feet of bank restoration, as well as about 2,200 square feet of mitigation planting in the lawn. With that, I'm kind of happy to answer any questions, or I don't think.
Question from the commissioner, Bill?
Move the chicken coop out of the 0 to 50. Your original project you had moved the pool out of the 0 to 50, completely. Why did you move it back? And given our interest in trying to maintain the 0 to 50, why move it back when you already had found a new place for it, which was out of the 0 to 50?
It was part of the landscape plan, and obviously, I'll invite Chris from Landshope up here. But I know that I can understand seeing that, but we are still reducing the hardscape in the 50-foot buffer, and we're moving it from essentially no feet from the top of bank to almost 31 feet from the top of bank.
Also, if I can just interrupt, if you see on our plan, there's some pretty significant pitch pines that would have been removed in the previous location that we were proposing. And Chris can speak to this further, but the new location of the proposed pool won't impact any trees. We were all out there after that first hearing. when we heard your feedback, and we found this place where it worked out really well. There's some significant, beautiful, majestic trees on this property, and so we thought it made more sense, even though it is closer to the resource area. In this instance, it made more sense to save trees.
Thank you.
Any other question from the commissioner? None? Darcy, on this planting plan, do we need demarcations? Or are you good with it?
I think we addressed that originally.
We have 3 projects all on the same road, so I think that was the other one.
Oh, that's right.
That was
It was. The
274,
one we
I
were
think.
talking about, the 9 inches of, yes, we should, if we don't have the mitigation demarcation, we should have that.
2 other items. One is the annual report for 3 years, and then the second one is assumed is the Wilkinson will be the contractor, and if there is a change of the contractor, you need to provide a written notification to staff.
Correct.
So,
Tom, was there irrigation requested, check in this temporary irrigation in the mitigation area? I don't remember.
We have not asked for temporary irrigation, but we're okay with the standard conditions, which is typically,
Well, Wilkins, if you guys want standard irrigation for the 3-year period. that's-
Temporarily.
I
Yeah,
put that
above-
condition in automatically.
Okay, super.
Yeah,
Great.
above ground,
Yeah,
temporary,
right,
yeah.
that makes a lot of
Perfect.
sense.
So, yeah, so are you good with the cobbles like you did with?
if it's okay, we're going to stay with the kind of standard using your guidelines, so that way we have some flexibility that we can go back with.
So, subject to receipt of a plan that,
Right.
send it to me first so I can
Sure.
review that.
Good job on this, though.
Yeah,
The first
yeah.
plan.
any public comment on this? None? Could I have a motion to approve this projects with subject to receipt of a revised plan and including the annual report of 3 years and the written notifications to staff if there is a change in terms of the contractor and the demarcations on the plans? Did I miss anything else?
So the revised plan, the only thing that's being revised is the demarcation?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the demarcation is just along the lawn edge?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and just aesthetically, we kind of want to be able to figure out what that will be, so that, okay, thank you.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You had been to that site? That site?
Yeah.
You're talking about the big trees. I wasn't there, so. Big trees were.
We have one easy certificate of compliance, Carol Zim, SE 3-5519. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved.
It's unanimous.
Next item is the Chair of Executive Sessions Minutes Review and Release. In consultations with the First Assistant Town Attorney, Catherine Conley, the Chair is taking the following action. I approve to release the Executive Session Minutes of March 8th and May 24th, 2022, which are related to the pending appeal by Borg Partners LLC to the DEP regarding 2046 Bums River Road, docket number WET-2022-008. On July 13, 2022, DEP dismissed the appeal with the petitioners volunteer withdrawal of the appeal. So we're done. Under the old new business, the Conservation Commission vote with the Extensions Act signed up by the Lieutenant Governor. And we need to authorize this Darcy to have a new authorization form so that she can sign the order conditions and the determination the RDA determinations. So I circulate a copy of the draft, and it was reviewed by Kate, and she's okay with the draft. So I need a motion to approve the,
Where is the draft?
I
We haven't
send you
seen
that.
it. We haven't seen the draft. I haven't seen it. Has anybody seen the
Is that
draft?
what you're just showing me?
No, no, no.
I've never seen it. We saw the
Circle
one
it
before,
back.
the
I
one
circled it
before,
out.
the one that should be rescinded, but where is the new draft?
I send it out, but
Well,
If Kate approved it, I'm okay with it. I mean,
Kate
she's our
reviewed it
town
and
lawyer.
approved it, so.
I'm just not worried
This is
about
just to make a reference to these, the extension act signed on July the 16th.
Yeah, but there's no emergency situation anymore, so what does the extension say?
The extensions say that the remote meeting is going to be expire on March 31st, 2023.
That's all it says? It doesn't say anything about open meeting law or anything like that?
Well, it's kind of mentioned that is extended with that along with the exemption of the open meeting law. But that's a formality. I thought I sent it out as a draft, so. John, you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question, Tom. The last two meetings have been on site. So are we, Darcy, going to be required to physically sign like the old days for these two meetings?
No,
I
we,
know starting next week, Tom, once we vote this in, but I'm just wondering what's the rule for these last two meetings?
For the last two meetings, including this one, under the previous authorization form, there's a clause and say it's 45 days from the expiration date of that open meeting law. So when that extended, that's 45 days cover this
Okay, so,
two-day period.
so Darcy can sign it under that
Right.
preceding, okay, great, super,
Yeah.
thank you.
Could I have a motion to approve the new authorization forms to authorize staff to sign the order of conditions and the RDA determinations?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? 6-1. And then we have one emergency order. Emergency certifications, 129 Salton Point Road, Barnstable, stone revetment emergency adjustment. Darcy?
okay, I'm sorry, I blew this off the screen. So it's been a long night. Hang on one second.
While Darcy is trying to find out the photo, George, Darcy, and I went out to the site to look at the problem with the stone revetment there. There's a big hole underneath the stone revetment, and it's in hazardous conditions that need to repair. So that's why we authorized to do this, or ask the homeowner to do the emergency repair for that hole, so that you don't have any problem with people walking in there and tripping over and so forth. Because it's the wave that comes through the cracks through the stone revetment and blow up into the backyard, so.
So,
She sent pictures.
yeah, this plan here, I don't, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a hash marked area. I didn't get the laser. Hold on. Okay, sorry. So, right here is the small section that they need to do the riprap repair. The access route will be by land, right here. So they're taking a section out, and then, oh, sorry, I brought up the form. Okay, this shows the access route through the existing lawn area. The section of fence will be taken down. And this is the section where the hole was big enough that a child could actually probably crawl in there. So there, did you want to come up?
Question
Yeah, just that, if anybody had any questions, they're just gonna be placing, because when storms come in, it goes up over the revetment, the water didn't have a place to drain, so it made great sense to put a section of pipe in there to allow the water to go through. We wanna send it right back out again, and then some stone along the edge, and this is just the emergency is just for this section of the revetment, and then they'll be filing a notice of intent to come in later for repairs on the whole revetment, so.
Any question from the commissioner? Bob is here in case you need to answer your questions. No?
Okay. Thank you. You're good to go.
Do you need a vote?
Oh, yeah, you can vote on it too. It just makes it safer, so.
Could I have a motion to approve the emergency order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Is approved.
Unanimous.
Thank you. The last one is our famous 704 redraft.
Larry, is this different than what you sent us? Okay, okay.
So I just want to mention, the purpose of these revisions is trying to reclarify the language in Chapter 704 and to reflect what we have interpreted in terms of the 704. The updating, including how we calculate the mitigation credit and the mitigation summary table to be shown on the engineering site plan. The mitigation planting shall be planted within between the 0 and the 50 buffer as much as possible, and then balance shall be planted in the 50 and the 100. I have asked, John and Luis to be part of the review, this team, and we also involved Darcy and Ed, so that we have kind of 5 sets of eyes to look at this. And since last time when we have Larry and Bill's comment, we look at those comments, and we try to look at trying to make some adjustment and see whether we can cover all of it. And during the review, John kind of mentioning or reminding us that, it's very difficult to write a regulations to fit every single situation in there. That's why we kind of drafted, and, we have some language in terms of as determined by the commissions at the different time, at the different locations. So I think we drafted up pretty well. We look at it 3 or 4 times to review it, to make sure before I send it out to the commissioner for review. I hope that, by the end of the day, we can have a public comment in next hearing date of the August 9th. And then depending on whether we have any comment, I want to get a final draft out version done so that we can either done it by August 16th or the 30th, so that we can adopt that new revised Chapter 704. Without talking a whole lot, I want to leave it up to the commissioner to provide any comments, so that I'm here trying to listen to all the comment stuff. So I know Larry is passing our a draft here. Maybe I'll give it to Larry first and see what his comment is.
Thank you. This is a do-over over the last 48 hours. And in part, and I'm not critical of the 3 of you who have worked on this. However, that means 4 of us have not participated in all of the considerations you have given. And that being the case, I looked at this very closely. There's a 1-page deals with the preface or preamble. That I'm not dealing with tonight, but I wanted to cover everything that I saw in this draft of a regulation, which I feel is relevant to be discussed and at least considered. The primary issues deal with, I'm not going to read all of this. I'll give it to you so you can read it and decide what you want to do with it. But the definition of an undisturbed buffer, 50-foot buffer, the question is, does it cover everything? Tom just made some mention you can't put every situation in there, but the the fact of the matter is that the public, especially the consultants who have to deal with their clients, are going to have to deal with these. And the question is, how detailed do we get? They are under B, dealing with the 50-foot disturb buffer. In some instance, there may be de minimis issues that maybe deserve waivers or exceptions. Should that be in there? I think it should. I'm going to skip over to performance standards, where the biggest issue that I heard back in December, I heard nothing prior to December 14, the thing at that time was something about commission practices, and yet I've yet to see anything that describes what those practices were and how they came into play. And that's the underlying problem. That's the problem that triggered this whole revision in the first place. So my feeling is that unless those commission practices are clearly identified, we don't know what the remedy is that we're supposed to be correcting. Moving down, I also felt that the the descriptions of what goes on within the 0 to 50 and 50 to 100 really need to be broken down either in subparagraphs or extremely clearly, so there's no question about it. There's a reference to overlapping it to the entire 100-foot zone, but my feeling is that that only works for very limited circumstances. Also, there was language that was, I recommended in my February recommendation that certain words not be excluded. I'm trying to find it. I highlighted it here. Insofar as possible, I think was the phrase, and yet that was deleted in the most recent draft, and I strenuously opposed that deletion. Those words have to be left in there, and the reasons is to avoid any later misinterpretation or lack of consideration by this commission or any other future commissioners that come along and say, well, why don't we do this? There's nothing in there prohibiting it. Two critical terms or words that had never been in any prior regulation were mitigation credits and excess mitigation. I think at what's been drafted now for mitigation credits to define it, I consider it to be incomplete and conflicting and somewhat confusing. It's not intentional that it's that way. It's just that, in my opinion, it needs to be much more clearly stated. Excuse me. Otherwise, I think the use of mitigation credits, how does it work? How do you arrive at it? There's some reference to, excuse me, either excess mitigation or prior mitigation credits, and yet that would have had to come from a certificate of compliance that occurred between 2011 and now, because nothing existed prior to then. Excuse me, I'm on meds for sinus. I think, as much as I'd like to keep going over it, I think I've hit the major highlights. I would encourage you to look at it. I would encourage also that I don't see any reason why this is being rushed. The public and the consultant community definitely needs to have a chance to review what is being submitted at some point in time. If any of these changes are going to be considered and worked in, I suggest that that date be by the 16th of August, and then the 30th of August can be the date that the public and the consultants appear. That's my recommendation. So am I going to prevail? I haven't yet, but it doesn't stop me. Thank you.
The phrase "as insofar as possible," I think we took, I would say, a few hours to look at it, and then we also have, over a couple of days, we also look at it and make sure that, because different people can have a different interpretations of this insofar as possible. That's the reason that we try to eliminate that possible and trying to provide a more direct interpretation of what we're trying to do. as far as the practices, since Lynn came in and trying to show us the mitigation credit, how to calculate it from 4 to 1, 1 to 4 in the 0 to 50, we kind of accepted that in a number of projects that we approved. And that was not described in the previous Chapter 704. And that's what we, trying to include it in the 704 as a practice. This is what we have been doing it. Even with the table that we're talking about in there, we always trying to ask the consultant to show us the mitigation table on the drawing plan. And this is a requirement per se, so that when we're looking at the plan, all the information are there, not from different locations, trying to find it. When it is also important for the staff, so that the information is right on the plan, and it's easy to do when the staff go and checks all the conditions for the final certificate of compliance.
I don't see any connection between the insofar as possible and the table. I see by removing that, I see an opportunity for the whole mitigation thing to be extended way beyond what we were originally talking about. I look at it the other way. I think we're all entitled to different opinions, and I think that we're going to get different opinions from the public. But that being said, I just think that those words, if you don't like those words, then I'd like something else that somehow qualifies it or minimizes the impact of not having it there.
There is something, and I can't find it right now. There's so much here. But there is something in here that actually is a substitute for it, but is less ambiguous. Actually, can you hear me?
No, I can't.
Sorry, okay. I keep forgetting. Okay. There is a clause in here that actually, it's not at exactly the same point as the insofar as possible. It's farther down, and in fact, when it came in, I said, oh, good. Larry will be happy with this because it enabled us to take out the insofar as possible, which is ambiguous. We know that from the long debate.
It's open
that
to
we
multiple
had.
interpretations.
Could I just finish, please?
Yep.
The long debate that we had with Dan Ojala about a proposal that he was working on. That one was taken out, and its substitute farther down, and it says more clearly what we had intended.
What does it say?
Well,
It's F.
It's
Um,
F, Louise.
Location of mitigation planting. Mitigation planting shall first be placed in the 50-foot buffer until filled.
Yeah.
Any remaining balance of mitigation planting shall then be placed within the 50 to the 100-foot buffer. The mitigation planting locations shall clearly be shown on the engineering site plan, which shall include the summary table mentioned in 704-3E5 above. The planting requirement shall be as specified in 707. So what we were clarifying instead of insofar as much was until it's filled, and then the rest goes in
Right.
into the 50 and the 100. So this clarifies that
Right.
Well,
part where you're saying
another
insofar.
interpretation, though, what does it mean until it's filled? I think that's another thing that I put in my
I don't
notes.
think it says it is as ambiguous as what we had as
Well,
insofar as possible.
okay.
We were all present, except for George and Bill, when the
last draft.
existing regulations were written. So we all know what we meant by that.
What do you, referring to 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but that's, that's,
Don't you know what we meant by that? I mean, you were
yeah.
there, and
Yeah,
and
but-
you and I and
Yeah.
John and,
but Louise, that was a whirlwind. I mean, I'm sorry, the learning curve isn't equal for all of us. When it came to 2011, That's a time when Dennis had the chair, and he brought a woman in to really present all these ideas to us. It was multiple nights that we discussed it. So I think that what prevents us from reconsidering this 11 years later?
Nothing, and that's what I'm saying, that as part of that, we all worked on it, we listened, we participated, and we collectively said, yeah, insofar as possible. We now learn that insofar as possible has created a lot of misunderstandings.
Well,
And the change that we proposed, which Darcy just located for me, I feel at least addresses that and is more clearly states what our intention was back then. That's all I'm saying. I'm addressing the insofar as possible.
I'm not fighting with how you interpret it. I'm simply saying that these are trigger words. These are ways that the four of us, George, Bill, Pete, and I, weren't part of this work that you've been doing since October and November. And that being the case, it could have been addressed then in your discussions, and it probably was. From what I'm hearing you say, it was. That doesn't mean that now we look at it and we're challenging you on it. And in that regard, if you consider it to be ambiguous, then I'll look at it that way as well in between now and the next time it comes back. But I hope that some of you do as well. And in that regard, maybe there's another phrase that can replace it rather than just wiping it off the map.
Well, we did, but
Yeah, but
my
then
point is,
cross-reference it. In that point, say, reference is made to this to cover it. But you skip it and you have to wait ahead, you have to wait till you get to that.
yeah, that's true.
Then maybe that's the way to deal with it. But right now, I'm not conceding that. I'm just saying there may be another way to cross that bridge.
True, true.
That's our interpretation. That's the, well, I mean, I call it the team. That's how we interpret it, looking at the language.
Yeah, we didn't
That's how we
ignore
do
it. We didn't
I mean,
ignore
we
it.
are not just saying that, oh, Tom said that, it will take that for granted. No, if the other four sets of five also give me some, comment and make adjustment to the regulations. I mean, not really changing anything, just for the clarifications of what we actually mean for the 704, how we're gonna apply to that stuff, so.
Well, one thing I want to float out there is, yes, I don't have to go to the 16th, and I don't want to go and, look at your stuff and then make another revisions, and then another meeting and going through all that stuff. I'd rather go to the consultant and get the comment, and then we can regroup and look at the whole thing globally and see what the final version would be. That's what I'm thinking. Bill?
Yeah, I'm a team player, and I'm trying to make really tiny edits. And there's something that's missing here. And I have only two issues. And one of them has to do with the issue of whether or not we plant, and I mean grass and water. Just, if you take hardscape and you remove hardscape and you're getting a 4 or 3-to-1 mitigation credit, I believe that the Conservation Commission should not be lifting up hardscape and leaving bare soil. Hardscape by definition is, it's gonna basically be a unvegetated thing. I know that John brought up a possible thing where there's some weird wooden deck that has grass growing under it, but that's pretty minor. I mean, 99% of the time, you're taking hardscape out, a patio or what have you, and you don't want to leave bare soil.
Correct.
And so, and I did not do what Larry did, which is print something, but I have something, I can send this to you all. And it basically, under the mitigation credit, it says Section E. If you look at that, under Section 2, see, E mitigation 2, I would suggest putting in one word and taking out 3 in a row. And it would be the following: mitigation credit shall be allowed when existing hardscape within 50-foot buffer zone is proposed to be removed and converted to lawn or left to regrow, and then insert the word planted, native vegetation, and then take out or fully planted, comma, as determined by the commission. So what you're saying is lawn is left to, converted to lawn or left to regrow with planted native vegetation as determined by the commission. If you do that, you have lawn, and we have the discretion to say whether it's just wild grasses or whether it's bushes or what have you. But by doing that, by saying or fully planted, you leave the option of not fully planted. And that,
Excuse me, Bill, that's not the way this was written. I mean, I agree with your point, but that is not the way this is written.
But-
This, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, so please.
well, I just think that when
Because
you,
I'm agreeing with your point.
and I think my edit makes it clearer, because you're not saying or fully planted. Everything is fully planted, whether it be with grass, you know, anything. I mean, just make it planted. If it's not, you know, or fully planted suggests it's not fully planted. And I think that's really important. And by simply doing what I said, which is with plant, you know, lawn or planted native vegetation as determined by us, that's clean, and you get 100% planting at our discretion as to what that really is. And that simple edit would be then also under mitigation 3 for the 50 to 100, because the language is the same. But it's just putting in planted native vegetation as determined by the commission and taking out or fully planted. I think that is very important to me, because it's so clear. No, you're not going to have a not fully planted place.
If you're willing, Bill, I'd like to paraphrase what you're saying of the concept, because this came up a couple of weeks ago when you were not healthy enough to be here. John brought it up. And that is that if you are within the 0 to 50, removing hardscape or removing something, what if you're removing invasives or something, whatever you're removing, it's a two-step process. If you're either going to replace it with something, a plant, or you're going to let it grow. But the concept is only one bite, and that is that removing in itself isn't enough, because the
You've gotta
plan
make-
then has to
Plant
propose
it.
the action that's going to be taken. And it's the two-part step that makes the mitigation work.
Right.
That I think is the wording that would make the most sense.
And I just think my two-word change here.
No, I'm not
is
trying
working
to, I'm
that.
not trying, I can complicate vanilla pudding. I've done it for 82 years, okay? I'm good at it.
So in the
But
interest of
aside
going
from
home,
that-
in the interest of trying to get out of here, I really think what I just suggested is really important to me. The other thing, which is,
Can we go back, stay on that one first?
we can,
Was that okay?
go ahead.
Because conceptually, I think, Tom, or we absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. The words as we wrote them, we think, and you can argue this point as any lawyer could.
And I will.
Okay, good. The words as we wrote them in the attempt, and Peter, this is what I said at that last meeting. You know, we used examples. The guy's got a 2-foot deck or whatever, and it's surrounded by vegetation, and we go out there and say, hey, this thing's gonna grow back naturally, fine. He's gonna get 4-to-1 credit for that deck that he removes, if that's what the commission decides. It's a site-specific decision by the commission.
But you're saying, like, but he takes it out. You're saying he takes it out.
Right.
And he leaves a bare spot for Mother Nature to simply.
My example, and Darcy, you help me out, because we have seen this again and again and again. He's got a little, and we've seen it, a little deck that he's got by the water, and he takes it out, okay? If it is surrounded by vegetation, and if experts and we say, hey, give that thing 6 months and it's gonna be overgrown with everything, then he's gonna get the 4-to-1 credit, just for removing it. But who decides that? You and I decide that. it was critical to use a very site-specific example. And when you and I have talked, the 50-foot swimming pool and he replaces it with sand. Well, absolutely, you're not going to get 4-to-1 credit for that unless it is, quote, fully replanted. That's what those words are designed to accomplish. What we thought is everything has to be site-specific. We can't sit here and write, well, if it's 2 feet, if it's 4 feet, or if it's fully replanted, or it isn't. We wanted it to be a site-specific basis based on the commission's discretion, site by site. So that's what the words are intended. So I think that was doing, I thought that was doing exactly what you wanted.
And yet, if you, by not making sure that it's fully planted, you leave it at the discretion of a commission which might be cavalier regarding the, it'll grow back, when in fact it doesn't.
Okay, but that is the role of the commission.
I know, but I guess I'm just thinking that we shouldn't just leave bare soil. I feel like just throw grass seed on it or
Maybe.
something.
So-
I just,
But that's a site-specific determination, and that is within the commission's jurisdiction, solely within the commissioner's decision. Now,
and the size of that area is not specified.
It
So
shouldn't be
then it's
specified.
it shouldn't be, no, but it becomes a subjective
determination.
But that's determined
determination. I
By whom?
just-
By whom?
By the commissions.
I know, I just think that
You
having
don't
it
trust the
planted.
commission's decision, that's
I
different,
guess,
you know.
I guess, do you have the potential to have, I don't know, I think everything should be planted. I do, I just do.
Okay, and I think it should be very site-specific, based on our experience, and we've seen it, Darcy, you can help me out, where, you know, clearly you didn't need to replant it, you know? But there are other examples clearly where it does have to be fully replanted. Fully replanted. And so that's what we're saying, that's very site-specific, based on the commission's decision. I don't know how else to do that unless you, you know, want to write a 500-page thing that says, well, if it's 2 by 2 and it's not this, if it's larger than this. So I felt, geez, this is great, because we do it site-specific, we look at the commission's discretion, and there it is. And I honestly, Bill, I really thought this was going to make you happy, so I'm honest to God I did.
I know,
You know,
I hear you,
sorry
but
if
I'm
it didn't,
not, but when I see or fully planted, I'm left thinking, well, then it's not fully planted.
Well,
And
that's
then-
our decision.
I know, I just find it really hard, I don't know.
You know,
Is that a,
That's where we were coming from.
Darcy,
That's all.
you're liking the language as it is. What, I mean, you've dealt with this 100,000 times, and I haven't.
Well, I kind of, I was taking it a different way, John. I thought the whole idea was, I think everything that's kind of bare should just be like seeded or revegetated or something. I thought we were saying with fully vegetated is if they were taking out a full-size pool, that type of thing, you were like thinking maybe that had to be revegetated with something.
Like bushes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought, but I do kind of agree with Bill that it's always, if somebody came in with an engineering plan and they're removing a deck or an old section of an addition or something, they would usually show that removed, and we would be expecting that lawn is gonna be going back there. But I can see Bill's point about saying it should be, everything should be revegetated if it's, or seeded or something. So I see both of your points, so I'm gonna, it's getting late, I agree with both of you, okay? And Sarah's dying up there without it. And poor Sarah has no air conditioning, so.
Darcy for president.
Time to close this meeting down.
I have only one other point, and I'm not, under number 4, mitigation credit, number 4, it says mitigation credit within the 100-foot buffer shall be allowed when planting is proposed in areas, parentheses, such as bare spots, after removal of invasives, lawns, paths, trails, in the buffers. The type of planting required shall be determined by the commission. And I'm left feeling that if you're getting mitigation credit, this is one of the mitigation credits. You're getting a 3-to-1, you're getting a 4-to-1. And I feel like lawn, doesn't cut that. You're not, I feel like it's a native vegetation, and that we should be, you know, if you're getting a mitigation credit for planting bare spots, removal of invasives, mitigation planting in lawns, if you're putting in native grasses, I feel like there should be, and this is where I'm not wedded to this being in the reg, but I think we should be really clear in some way that those native grasses that are planted shouldn't be mowed, but perhaps once or twice a year, that they should be maintaining their filter capacity, that's what you're trying to do, is create that vegetated filter in that 0 to 50. And I know you have like the first 20 feet should be not mowed, or I don't know what you got, you have different rules and whatnot, but I feel like if you had, and I had in here, can't we add, and I'm not falling on my sword on this one, in cases where native grasses are planted for mitigation credit, comma, such areas cannot be mowed more than twice annually.
But that's under meadows.
It's what?
I think we covered that under meadows.
Under meadows?
Yeah.
What is?
I think-
If we approve for
Yeah,
the meadow,
yeah,
it would be
but-
only mowed once or twice a year, and that's it.
Yeah.
The meadow being the native grasses. I mean, again, there's different ways to skin that
There's
cat.
a section farther down on meadows.
Okay,
Paragraph.
okay.
Meadows are much more valuable than lawns.
Yeah,
Lawns we have in here, you know, crying out loud, lawns aren't that great.
So here,
So, yeah.
your
Meadows.
your
Call it
language
meadows.
is mitigation credit.
Yeah, you should be getting that for meadows.
That is getting a 4 to 1, and you're
yeah.
being planted. That means that if you are putting in native grasses, that's qualifying as meadow?
It should.
It should.
Darcy, that was your
The-
one issue, though, that you talked about.
Yeah,
Remember-
okay, so what we're finding is there are going to be times that maybe a consultant would say, you know what, we're not going to gain, they're not going to want to end up if they're taking something away from the side of a house, like a deck or something, and it's right up against the house, if they're being told that, okay, to get rid of some of the hardscape, which that is the first thing that the commission would like to see, but you got to put a thing of shrubs right up against your house or something like that, they're going to go, you know what, forget it. I'm not even going to offer taking away the hardscape. So I think the situation there is we were trying to state that there are going to be times that if they take a deck or a patio or something away and it's up close to the house and it's already, or it's in a pre-existing 50-foot lawn section, you don't all want to see a thing of shrubs right up against the house. But we're very happy that they're taking the deck away. So you're walking a fine line. You're gonna be requiring them so much, they're gonna go, you know what, we're not gonna offer taking the hardscape away. So that's why we were saying, so, you know, removal, sometimes it could be lawn, sometimes it needs to be planted.
Which is also, I say, at the discretion of the commission.
Yeah.
But I'm supportive of that because under the mitigation credit above, it actually refers to lawn and converted to lawn or left to regrow in what I would say is with planted native vegetation as determined. So I get the lawn part. I mean, that sometimes mitigate, you know, you're taking out the hardscape and you're putting in lawn.
Right.
I get that.
So I'm not sure what we were
It was about the meadow, when you're planting native grasses and you're.
Oh, I
pulling
think,
out
the
if you're
problem is
pulling out-
if you're saying you can have lawn, but you can only mow it twice a year.
No, I said in cases where, my clause was in cases where native grasses are planted for mitigation credit, comma, such areas cannot be mowed more than twice annually. That's all I'm saying, is that when you're dealing with the native grasses, as we decide, oh, let's put native grasses in here, and.
Then we
if
usually cover it as
That's
meadows.
a meadow thing,
Yeah.
then it's covered, I get that.
Yeah.
Right, Peter, that's the thing.
I'm
Yeah.
good with that, and so we don't need
Okay,
that. But
yeah.
I really believe in my little two-word change. And you do too.
Whoa, wait a minute. Split that baby.
Now, remember, there's someone sweltering at 80 degrees upstairs.
Yeah, okay, I'm done.
So what I'm let me going back is like, I'd rather go out to get the comment from the consultant before I make any other revisions to these versions.
Excuse me, consultants and the public at large.
Right,
So,
right.
not just Arlene.
Because otherwise I'll be end up going in circles, keep changing before we go out to the consultant. I'd rather do it, get the comment from the consultant and the public, and then make one final change, and then coming back to the commissions.
For a vote.
That I'm going for.
I consider that to be a workable approach. I also consider it to be a workable approach for the three of you have talked. There's no reason the three other of us can't talk also. We have every right to. Bill and Pete, what if Pete and I wanted to get together and talk about something? There's no reason we can't do
Make sure you
it.
don't have more than three.
I'm well aware of
Okay.
that. I also know another side of it. That's another topic for
Wow.
another day.
I mean,
But,
that's the only side I know.
I think that the communications, the open meeting law has strangled us for the last 2.5 years. And I'm sick and tired of it, and I think that we need to be able to communicate. If we do it in this situation, okay, this is rare to have this. We haven't had it much. And being back on Zoom, it's not going to be any easier. But I think that the Bill, can I have another one of those, please?
Sure. You're not suggesting we violate the law, though, Larry. You're suggesting the law be changed.
I expect we treat it with some flexibility. We don't let it.
No.
Well,
It's all right.
So I'm going for
I'd
the
have to
public
talk to you
comment
about
on the
that, John, in
16
person.
with the consultant stuff.
Yes, say it out loud, yep.
So I'm going to have a public comment with the consultant on August the 16th. I'll schedule a session for that so that we can get all the feedbacks before we make any more changes to it. We have one set of minutes, July 12th.
Make a motion to accept those minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I've got a question. The minutes, and I'm glad that Kim is here. I don't know whether she prepared them. I think you did, Kim, but I sent in a request yesterday that my status as having abstained was not noted. She corrected it.
Yes.
My concern deals with the Brown compliance, the minutes on that, kept saying commissioner did this, commissioner commented. In the past, we always used to name who the commissioner was that said something. And I just wonder why we didn't do that. In this case, that case, there were a number of us.
Speak in your mic, Larry.
Speak to your mic.
There were a number of us in that Brown one that commented on it. It wasn't just me, but it was others. Is there a reason why we didn't name the commissioner who spoke? I think it should be that way. What's the thought by anybody else? And Kim, if you have any thoughts, I value them.
I thought we were not supposed to
We're not,
name
yeah, we don't name, we used to do that.
Why?
The reason is we're trying to get the minutes down to a smaller amount, so we say commissioner had a concern about this. We rather have it like a broad statement of there were some commissioners that felt this way and some that. We do not want to get back into, well, you chose a bullet that says my name, but you didn't mention her name or something like that. We don't have time to get
I'm
into the
not
minutes.
advocating that game. In the past, many times it would be Commissioner Abadili said this, Commissioner Houle said that, and we always
Because
did
we'd
it
have
that
to be
way.
listing every comment that somebody says. We don't want to get into this about,
One of the changes when Rob Gatewood was here was the reliance on the minutes. And what we said, and I think it's still in these are Scrivener's notes, and that you should go to the tape for the actual hearing, where obviously then it would be identified. So we specifically wanted the notes to be minimalized in order to meet the extent of the law, but obviously the video is the record of
the meeting.
The records
Yep,
of the
the-
meeting, so
the
it's covered
minutes,
there.
the minutes only have to be so somebody can pick it up and get an idea of
Quick
what
idea.
happened to the hearing.
Quick, yeah.
From like a plan was presented, these were the issues that were discussed, not that this commissioner said this and this commissioner said that. Because if we miss one thing that somebody says and we listed another one, then the minutes are going to come back to us for changes. And we don't have time for that.
So it's always the minutes plus the tape as the final document.
Right. That's the record for
Right.
the court.
So I made the motion.
Second.
All in favor? It's approved. Opposed?
Opposed? Abstained.
Abstained. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourning at 9:19.
I love Darcy.